how they are making an impact on the world. Zooming into all things Hallyu, the culture wave. From the showbiz and the arts to traditional culture and lifestyle. We delve into the global trends inspired by Korean culture. Delivering the latest, insightful, and interesting news about Hallyu as it spreads around the world. Are you ready to ride the K-culture wave? Introducing a new aspect of Korea every day, one day, one K-culture. The latest trends on K-trend. Heartfelt stories on K-people. Communicating through the flavors of Korea, K-food. Movies to watch, K-story. And deeply moving performances on K-stage. A fan meeting with K-pop stars in real time, After School Club plus 11th. From dance and singing to playful acts that can't be shown on stage. K-pop stars reply to messages from their fans around the world, interacting together on the live show. Make unforgettable memories with your favorite stars on ASC.
The first impeachment trial hearing for President Yoon was held this afternoon at the Constitutional Court, but ended in less than 5 minutes amid his absence. Amid the looming second arrest attempts of the president, the CIO, police, and the presidential security team met today, seeking to prevent any violence while the arrest is being carried out. North Korea fired more ballistic missiles this morning, the second time in the space of just 8 days. It's January 14th, 8 p.m. in Seoul. This is Newscenter. Thank you for joining us. I'm Yoon Jung-min. We start with the president's impeachment trial today at the Constitutional Court, which concluded within minutes due to his absence. The bench rejected a request by the president's team to recuse a justice. Our correspondent Oh Soo-young brings us the latest.
Meeting adjourned after 4 minutes. President Yoon Suk-yeol's first impeachment trial hearing wrapped up almost as soon as it began, as the leader did not show up before the Constitutional Court on Tuesday.
As the respondent is absent, proceedings will not continue today in accordance with Article 52, Paragraph 1 of the Constitutional Court Act.
Yoon's absence was largely expected as his legal team announced he would not attend the first session and submitted a series of objections to the court. These include an objection to the first hearing and the court's decision to fix 5 hearing dates without consultation. It also filed a request to recuse Justice Chung Gae-sun, who was appointed to the bench this month. Yoon's team cited her connections to the opposition Democratic Party and her husband's close connection with former Chief Justice Kim Il-soo, who is co-chair of the National Assembly's panel of lawyers trying to impeach the president. The court's acting Chief Justice said the bench rejected the recusal request and said the court's announcement of multiple hearing dates aligns with the Constitutional Court Act. Speaking to reporters, Yoon's attorney Yoon Gak-gun expressed deep regret and indicated the president's team will continue to contest the proceedings.
The rush scheduling of hearings is unnecessary. Even if hearings were scheduled through February 4th, there was ample opportunity during today's or the January 16th hearing to consult with and notify the defense counsel. Such omissions cast doubt on the fairness and neutrality of the trial process.
Meanwhile, the National Assembly's impeachment team called for swift proceedings and for the president himself to attend his trial.
The respondent is expected to continue employing various measures, even after today, in order to hinder the swift and smooth progression of the trial.
Yoon's absence at the first hearing means that the session has been rescheduled for Thursday. Now, if he skips the hearing a second time, the court can proceed without him. However, it's unclear how far the arguments can proceed at this point. During their 2 pre-trial sessions, President Yoon's lawyers and the National Assembly's panel failed to narrow their differences over the main grounds for impeachment due to various sticking points. First, Yoon's lawyers say the National Assembly's panel removing charges of insurrection as a main argument for impeachment makes no sense, as the Assembly's motion to remove him from power cited insurrection as a major reason. The Constitutional Court is expected to decide on this matter. Also, Yoon's team filed an objection to the court's decision to obtain records from ongoing trials and criminal investigations over the martial law declaration, arguing that it violates the Constitutional Court Act. By raising procedural issues and various complaints, observers say Yoon's legal team appears to be angling for more time, having criticised the court's focus on holding expedited proceedings. Yoon's team has also cited security concerns as state investigators seek to execute an arrest warrant to question the president over insurrection charges. These challenges, if accepted by the court, could delay the trial's progression. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
We now move on to the latest regarding the attempt to arrest President Yoon Suk-yeol. For details, Arirang's Moon Hae-ryun joins us live from the president's residential neighborhood. Hae-ryun, I believe there was a 3-way meeting earlier this morning among anti-corruption officials, the police, and the presidential security team. What has been shared about that?
That's right, Jung-min. So the Corruption Investigation Office for high-ranking officials, the police and the presidential security team held a meeting earlier today in order to discuss the execution of the warrant to detain President Yoon. Now, the CIO has said that the meeting will not influence their plans and that they simply listened to the opinions that were raised during the meeting. An official from the CIO said that the discussions were centered on ensuring a peaceful execution of the warrant, but no conclusions were reached. The CIO noted that it is waiting for a more solid response from the Presidential Security Service without setting a specific deadline, and further added that there are no additional meetings planned as of now. This comes following the public appeal from the President's Chief of Staff Chung Jin-seok this morning, which said the Presidential Office is willing to cooperate with the police and the CIO. This included options for investigation at a neutral location or through a visit. However, the CIO commented that they have yet to receive a formal request regarding alternative arrangements. In this morning's statement, Chung further emphasized that Yoon must be allowed to fully exercise his right to defend himself and present his position, as should be guaranteed for all South Korean citizens.
What has been shared about the timing of the second arrest attempt?
Well, Tangmin, it's been more than a week since the new warrant to detain Yoon was issued, and actually this just in, the police and the CIO have reportedly been granted access into the presidential residence by the Capital Defense Command's 55th Guard Corps. Now, it's also been reported that the police held a meeting earlier today in order to discuss matters related to the execution of the warrant. Now, the meeting reportedly took place today, this morning at 10 a.m., lasting for around 2 hours between the Special Investigation Team of the National Office of Investigation and commanders from the criminal task forces of the Seoul, Gyeonggi-do Province and Incheon police agencies. The execution of the warrant could begin as early as 5 a.m. tomorrow, and authorities aim to complete the execution within this week. Discussions focused on concrete plans on how to enter the heavily fortified presidential residence in Hannam-dong behind me, which is secured with barricades and barbed wire. Specific strategies were reportedly discussed, including measures to suppress resistance from the presidential security team, searching the residence and detaining President Yoon. So approximately 1,000 personnel from the security investigation teams and regional investigation units of the 4 metropolitan police departments will be deployed for the execution of the warrant. Now, this includes 301 investigators from the Seoul Metropolitan Police Agency's regional investigation unit. These personnel have completed the necessary procedures to be dispatched to their temporary assignment to the CIO, set for January 15th to the 17th, so tomorrow until Friday. And this suggests preparations for a potential 2 to 3 day operation as formally reported should the Presidential Security Service resist the execution of the warrant.
Hae-ryun, what is the atmosphere around the president's residential area like as we speak?
Well, Tangmin, I'm not sure if you can pick up on the sounds happening behind me, but despite the lateness of the hour and the cold weather, there is still quite a crowd gathered here at the presidential residence, and tensions are continuing to mount alongside expectations that the second attempt to execute the warrant will happen within the next 24 hours. So the proximity of the rally locations for both sides has raised concerns about potential clashes, and to prepare for any possible incidents, the police have positioned riot squad vehicles between the groups in order to separate them. Security around the presidential residence remains tight, with the presence of armed guards becoming more prominent. So photos were taken yesterday showing heavily armed security personnel patrolling the area wearing helmets, masks and tactical gear. It appears that the presidential security team is further reinforcing security measures inside the residence, with barbed wires and chains placed in various areas within the grounds. And that's all I have for today, so back to you, Tongmin.
Okay, Hae-ryun, thank you for the coverage. That was our Moon Hae-ryun reporting live from the president's official residential neighborhood. The rival parties are now each pushing at the National Assembly their respective versions of a bill calling for a special counsel investigation into President Yoon. The ruling party announced its drafts, quote, excludes unlawful components, as stated in the opposition's, while the main opposition urged the PPP to propose a more concrete plan. Our National Assembly correspondent Lee Si-hoo reports.
The ruling People Power Party announced it has decided to propose its own version of a bill for a special investigation into President Yoon's short-lived imposition of martial law that excludes what the party calls the unlawful components of the version drafted by the opposition parties, and with further restrictions on its scope and depth. Floor leader Kwon Sung-dong told reporters on Tuesday that the PPP's proposal leaves out, quote, unconstitutional and toxic clauses stated in the proposal by the main opposition Democratic Party. These are mainly the allegations that Yoon and his aides instigated an insurrection and purposefully induced foreign aggression. Kwon further urged the DP to engage in negotiations as suggested by acting President Choi Sang-mok. If the DP does not agree, Kwon warned that his party will ask the acting president to veto the bill. Tuesday's announcement follows seeming discord among PPP members earlier, who up until the day before were divided on whether the party should pursue an investigation into its conservative president. Following Kwan's announcement, DP spokesperson Kang Yoo-jung said the opposition is open to discussions once the ruling party has proposed a concrete draft, adding that the PPP's bill appears to be more of an idea at the moment. Kang said that if such negotiations take place before Thursday, the day the opposition parties plan to put their bill up for a National Assembly vote at a plenary session, it's possible a negotiated bill could replace it. Earlier Tuesday, DP floor leader Park Chan-dae said the ruling party's, quote, refusal to investigate allegations of insurrection in itself is an acknowledgement of its involvement in the insurrection, and urged the PPP to cooperate with the opposition. The primary focus of the opposition's proposal is to uncover whether President Yoon unlawfully instigated an insurrection and violated the constitution in the process. The initial version of its bill was vetoed by acting President Choi 2 weeks ago. The opposition's goal is to have the bill officially go into effect before the upcoming Lunar New Year holiday. 이시후, Arirang News.
Shifting gears, North Korea test-fired a series of short-range ballistic missiles earlier this morning, posing its second act of provocation for the new year in just over a week, as the Trump administration is poised to return to the White House next week. Our correspondent Kim Jong-sil has more.
At around 9:30 a.m. on Tuesday, North Korea launched several short-range ballistic missiles from the Ganggae area in Jeongdo province. The missiles flew approximately 250 kilometers before landing in the East Sea, a frequent target in North Korean missile tests. The Joint Chiefs of Staff announced that South Korea and U.S. intelligence detected North Korea's launch preparations early and tracked the missiles in real time.
Our military has increased its surveillance and readiness to prepare for any additional launches, while closely sharing related information with the US and Japan.
Tuesday's SRBM launches mark North Korea's second missile test this year. On January 6th, North Korea fired an intermediate-class hypersonic solid-fuel ballistic missile from the Pyongyang area. Some analysts tie the launches to the upcoming U.S. presidential transition, while others point to broader strategic motives. Yang Mu-jin, president of the University of North Korean Studies, explains North Korea's possible intentions.
First, North Korea aims to speed up the completion of its 5-year defense development plan. Second, it's testing new short-range missiles. Third, it's showing confidence in its ability to launch various types of missiles anytime and anywhere. Lastly, it's a display of military dominance over Seoul and the greater capital region.
In response, acting President Choi Sang-mok condemned Tuesday's launch as a clear violation of UN Security Council resolutions, vowing a firm response in coordination with the U.S. Kim Jong-sil, Arirang News.
Korea's exports of information and communication technology products soared almost 26% on-year in 2024. Our correspondent Lee Soo-jin covers this latest data.
South Korea's tech shipments reached a new annual high in 2024, led by record chip exports. Data from the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy showed that ICT exports last year came to $235 billion, up nearly 26% compared to the same month the year before. This marks a fresh high on a yearly basis, surpassing the previous record set in 2022, as ICT exports have continued to see year-on-year rises for 14 straight months. The ministry attributed this mainly to outbound semiconductor shipments reaching an all-time annual high of $142 billion in 2024, boosted by robust global demand for AI-related products. That's up a whopping 42.5% compared to the year before. Chip exports also surpassed the $10 billion mark for the 8th consecutive month as shipments of memory chips, including high-bandwidth memory semiconductors, showed significant growth. And a shift to a double-digit growth in mobile phones, as well as large demand for solid-state drives, also contributed to 2024's record-high tech exports. By country, exports to Vietnam and the United States, which showed a sluggish performance in 2023 due to a slump in the global economy, both recorded their highest ever export value last year. China, South Korea's top export destination, accounted for over 40% of Korea's total ICT exports last year, on the back of strong chip demand. As for exports in December alone, shipments reached more than $22 billion, up more than 24% year-on-year. But it wasn't just December that saw solid monthly exports, as shipments surpassed a $20 billion mark for 5 straight months starting last August. And exports in the last month of the year were also bolstered by chip shipments, with both memory and system semiconductors showing significant increases compared to the previous year. 이수진, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, January 27th this year has been declared a holiday to pave the path for a 6-day Lunar New Year celebration that authorities hope will serve to encourage domestic spending. Our Kim Do-yeon has more.
The government has confirmed that January 27th will be a temporary holiday, making this year's Seollal or Lunar New Year a 6-day holiday. While this had already been announced, the final confirmation vote by Cabinet was held on Tuesday during a weekly meeting. Acting President and Deputy Prime Minister for Finance Choi Sang-mok said this is to boost the suffering economy.
I hope people take the opportunity to recharge during the long holiday, while also boosting the domestic economy through local travel and responsible consumption. We ask that you participate in helping foster a spirit of mutual growth and solidarity.
He said this year's Seollal needs to be used as an opportunity to help the economy recover. He also added that, as previously announced, the government decided on the biggest Seollal support package. This includes increasing the supply of 16 key grocery items by 150% to help lower grocery bills, as well as train ticket discounts. In the meantime, he also made a push for locally produced gift sets.
During this holiday, to promote domestic agricultural and seafood consumption, we ask that you actively participate in buying the highly discounted gift sets made of local rice or local beef, the key Seollal gift items.
He also urged the members of the cabinet to share the government's efforts, saying if the public isn't aware of the policies, then they're useless. Meanwhile, he also said that as government agencies' New Year's briefings continue, the government has been focusing on resolving major issues. But he said speed is the most important aspect and called on cabinet members to treat each day as if it were a month during normal times. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
In the U.S., preparations are underway for the inauguration of America's 47th president on January 20th. Lee Seung-jae has the latest.
President-elect Donald Trump will return to the Oval Office as the 47th president of the United States at noon on January 20th, which is the third of 4 days of related events. 2 days before Inauguration Day on January 18th, the president's reception will take place, along with a fireworks display at Trump National Golf Club in Virginia. Later that night, a cabinet reception and vice president's dinner will take place. On the following day, a wreath-laying ceremony will take place at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier at Arlington National Cemetery. The official Inauguration Day will begin with a service at St. John's Church, where Trump will be sworn into office. Trump will then head over to the president's room near the Senate chamber, where, as part of tradition, he will sign nominations. After a luncheon hosted by the Joint Congressional Committee on Inaugural Ceremonies, the presidential parade will take place from the Capitol to the White House. The parade will be followed by an Oval Office signing ceremony before Trump attends the Commander-in-Chief Ball, the Liberty Inaugural Ball, and the Starlight Ball. On the last day, on January 21st, inaugural activities will conclude with the National Prayer Service in the morning. Ahead of the inauguration ceremonies across various locations in the U.S. Capitol, security in the city has been significantly strengthened.
More than 30 miles of anti-scale fence will be used for the inauguration, more than any other NSSE ever before. The Secret Service's comprehensive security plan We'll continue to use drones as part of our protective posture.
Officials expect nearly 250,000 people will attend the inauguration, with many more expected in the downtown area of D.C. for demonstrations. Ahead of the inauguration, the U.S. Senate is also set to hold its confirmation hearings for the cabinet nominees. In particular, attention is focused on the confirmation hearing for the U.S. Secretary of Defense held on Tuesday. This comes amid controversy surrounding Pete Hegseth, who was investigated by police over sexual assault allegations. More than a dozen other confirmation hearings will take place over a span of a week as the country prepares for the inauguration of Trump. 이승재, Arirang News.
The air quality has got even worse than yesterday due to dust from overseas. The dust will clear from the center parts of the country tonight as the cold wind strengthens. However, as the cold wind moves south from tonight, the weather will get cold again tomorrow morning across the country. Cold wave warnings and advisories have been issued for northeastern parts of Gyeonggi-do province, as well as Gangwon-do province and the mountainous areas of northeastern Gyeongsang-buk-do province. On the other hand, along the East Coast, where there's no news of rain or snow, the atmosphere remains extremely dry. Please be careful not to cause any wildfires. Tomorrow morning, most areas will start off below 0 degrees. Highs will move up to -1 degree in Seoul and Chuncheon, Gwangju and Gyeongju, 2 degrees. Temperatures will rise back again from Thursday. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
And that is Newscenter for tonight. Thank you for watching. A panel session coming up.
How to survive in Korea. Workplace. Step 1. Lunchtime. The most important morning routine is to check today's menu. Food is essential for survival. Memorize today's menu. The highlight of office life. Lunchtime. Rice in the bottom left, soup in the bottom right. The top is for the sides. The sauce and the spoon go here. This is the basic layout, but it's a bit odd to switch rice and soup. When you're done, pour the leftovers into the soup bowl. It doesn't look that appetizing, so wait until others are done eating. Step 2. Neng, nep, nenep. These are the most used expressions at work. Choose the most appropriate form. Neng, nep, nenep. Remember that the formal ne can sound a bit stiff. Did you just say yes? Absolutely not acceptable. You want to find the right word for the right occasion. Step 3. Desteria. Desteria is the oasis in the desert. Show them your character. If you're not the diligent type, get a stooky plant. Work is tough. Laugh and the whole world laughs with you. Weep and you weep alone. Stay put, like the stooky that survives in the desert. Hang in there until the end. Of course, you can always quit. You matter more than anything else. Step 4. Survival kit. Every worker needs a survival kit. Survival kit level 1. This position gets the most exposure. Grab one when you need a sugar boost. Always keep a few treats you can offer your co-workers. Survival kit level 2. These are for hunger pangs before and after a meal. You'll need them when you take a coffee break with your office buddies. Survival kit level 3. Trash talking your boss with your soulmate. Did you survive in the workplace? Office romance? Be careful. Even the photocopier knows all the gossip.
Our lives are swept into a vortex of this intricately connected world. Providing an in-depth exploration of global security, diplomacy, economy, and culture to offer a unique international perspective. Embark on a global news journey with the Geovista today.
Presiding over Monday's cabinet meeting following his latest diplomatic agenda in New York, President Seoul-Tokyo, South Korea's economy will grow. The central bank has kept its key interest rate unchanged. Mission complete for Russian booty selfish. Seoul is rallying in hopes of bringing the World Expo 2030. Arirang. Welcome to Within the Frame, where we bring you today's most pressing issues from across the globe into focus. I'm Kim Mo-gan. Now, Japanese Foreign Minister Takeshi Iwaya is paying a two-day visit to South Korea starting January 13th. The visit is all the more significant as it's the first by a top Japanese official since Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba's trip was canceled due to Korea's political conflict. Foreign Minister Iwaya met with his South Korean counterpart Cho Tae-yal and also sat down with acting President Choi Sang-mok to discuss ways to develop bilateral relations. As the two nations commemorate the 60th anniversary of their normalized diplomatic relations, questions now arise about the future of their partnership. So how will this visit influence efforts to address long-standing historic challenges and strengthen trilateral cooperation with the United States? For more on this, we invite Choi Hyun-jin, Associate Professor of Political Science at Kyunghee University. Welcome, Professor.
Good evening. Thank you for having me.
And also joining us is Bruce Klinger, Senior Research Fellow at the Heritage Foundation. Great to have you with us.
Thank you for having me.
So let's start right away with Mr. Klinger. So, like I've said, Japanese Foreign Minister Takeshi Iwaya arrived in South Korea yesterday for a two-day visit. Now, this is the first by a high-ranking Japanese official since South Korea's political turmoil has grown up. Now, Prime Minister Shigeru, so what kind of significance do you think does this latest visit have? And could this be considered as a sign of Japan's efforts to normalize and strengthen bilateral ties?
Very much so. During the question about what the current and future South Korean policies will be, not only towards Japan, but also the region, this is a way not only to continue the coordination between the Ishiba government in Japan and the Yoon administration, but it's also trying to sort of regularize or institutionalize these meetings so that any changes in the South Korean government in the future will have a momentum that maintaining good relations between the two countries. When Prime Minister Ishiba was elected in September, in a way, Japan-South Korean relations dodged a bullet because another candidate was much more nationalistic and would likely have caused strains in the relationship. But Mr. Ishiba is seen as much more empathetic on history issues, even though political constraints in his country will prevent much progress on history, but certainly he will maintain previous Prime Minister Kishida's strong support for good relations between the two countries.
Right. Now, to Professor Che, Foreign Minister Iwaya's first stop during his visit was to pay tribute at the Seoul National Cemetery. This was the first in 7 years by a Japanese foreign minister. How do you read into his choosing of his first visit to the cemetery?
Yes, it is true. He visited Seoul National Cemetery, and I believe this is surely a very respectable gesture by Japanese government. And this also shows Japanese intent to improve bilateral ties with South Korea. So, however, the visit by Japanese Foreign Minister also showed some remaining challenges between the two countries. For example, during a joint press conference with the South Korean Foreign Minister Jo Tae-yeol, the two leaders show some differences in how to address historical issues. So, for example, when asked about the last 2 years disrupted memorial ceremony at the Sado mine site, Minister Jo Tae-yeol emphasized South Korea's concern and also need for more open discussion between the two countries. On the other hand, the Minister Iwaya gave a very general response, stating that Japan has a plan to hold annual memorial events, but didn't really provide a specific solution on these historical issues. But despite these differences, Minister Iwaya clearly stressed the importance of South Korea and Japan working together on important global challenges like North Korean nuclear threat and also the ongoing tensions such as the war in Ukraine. So I think that this visit by Minister Iwaya clearly shows Japan's desire to maintain and strengthen this bilateral tie. But on the other hand, the lack of specific action on historical issues also shows that there are many challenges still remain.
Right. Professor, you just mentioned about the controversy surrounding the Sado Mine Memorial Ceremony. Then how should we address this very old, historic issues that we have been having conflicts with Japan? How do we make it into a future-oriented relationship?
That's a very challenging question. So to build a more future-oriented relationship between the two countries, I think it is important to handle historical issues with care and respect between the two countries. because unresolved historical issues make it very hard to build and maintain trust between the two countries. So I think both countries, Japan and Korea, need to take clear and meaningful steps together. The first, Japan should show sincerity by acknowledging the historical realities of forced labor and also other issues from Japanese colonial era. For example, exhibit at places like Sado mine site should clearly mention the forced labor of Korean people by the Japanese government in the past. So actions like this can help rebuild the trust between the two countries. And also secondly, the two countries should have regular talks about historical issues to prevent any misunderstandings. So creating a joint group of experts or historians could help both sides agree on historical facts and also reduce some conflicts over sensitive topics in the interpretation of history. And lastly, South Korea should continue to push for fair and accurate representation in memorial, like ensuring that Sado mine includes the full truth about the past. Japan must fulfill its promise to include some historical truths in both exhibition and also ceremonies to strengthen trust between the two countries. So this is a very challenging and difficult issue, but by addressing history with honesty and respect, and I believe South Korea and Japan can create a stronger and also more cooperative relationship for the future.
Right, so acknowledgement from Japan's side and more dialogue from both sides are required. Now, Foreign Minister Cho Tae-yeol and Foreign Minister Iwaya discussed ways to develop bilateral relations as both countries mark the 60th anniversary of normalization of diplomatic ties this year. Mr. Klinger, given President Yoon Suk-yeol's suspension from office, and this has inevitably impacted South Korea-Japan relations, what kind of measures are needed to maintain the current momentum?
Well, under the current Korean administration, we need to maintain all of the very extensive contacts that have developed in the last several years since President Yoon's bold and politically risky outreach to Japan. So we've had really quite an impressive number of meetings, not only between security and diplomatic officials, but also economic and cultural. So those need to be continued. All of the security agreements need to be maintained, military exercises, and also the exchange in real time of North Korean missile launch information that was agreed to at Camp David in August of 2023. If the Democratic Party wins a special election to replace President Yoon, that's when the real questions begin. I met with a DP National Assembly member when I was in Seoul last week, and he assured me that the DP wanted to maintain the strong relations, and that while they wanted to continue to improve recognition on history issues, that the DP, at least according to this one member, would not try to undo the forced labor agreement, would not cancel bilateral and trilateral military exercises, or the missile exchange of missile launch information. But there are questions as to really whether the DP would do that, because in the past their members, including the party leader, have had very strong nationalist statements that really raise the question of whether relations between Seoul and Tokyo would be much more strained under a DP administration.
Now, staying with the talks, foreign ministerial talks, the ministers reiterated the importance of trilateral security cooperation between Seoul, Washington, and Tokyo in response to Pyongyang's nuclear threats. Previously, Mr. Klinger, you mentioned that despite the growing importance of trilateral cooperation due to North Korea's provocations, the outlook remains bleak. Could you elaborate further on that?
Well, just a few short months ago, really the only question was on Washington, and if President Trump was reelected, what his policies would be towards both countries as well as to the region. But since then, we've had the election in Japan where Prime Minister Ishiba won, and then he called a snap election, which really was disastrous for the ruling party. They lost their majority in the legislature for the first time in 15 years. And right now, although the policies will continue, because Prime Minister Ishiba is leading a minority government, he has to really seek agreement by the other parties in order to get any kind of legislative measures enacted, which can lead to concessions by the ruling party. And then, of course, the issue in South Korea, where now we're uncertain as to what the administration or future administration's policies will be. So in the past, it was sort of like three horses pulling very strongly in the same direction. But right now, really, Japan is the steady one. We don't know what President Trump's policies will be, and we certainly don't know what a Democratic Party administration's policies would be towards Japan, the United States, as well as North Korea and China.
Right. So with this uncertainty, could you explain for us the potential stance of the Trump administration on America's foreign and security policies, particularly on South Korea and Japan?
Well, the real answer is we don't know. If we look back on his first term, he made very negative comments about both South Korea and Japan. He had a much more transactional view of alliances rather than the sort of traditional bipartisan view that alliances are in U.S. strategic interests and that it's also in our interest to have our forces stationed overseas to deter and, if necessary, defend against opponents' military actions. Also, on the special measures agreement, he directed his negotiators to seek a profit off of our sons and daughters in uniform stationed overseas. What I'm hoping is that in a second term, where there'll be a much greater emphasis on deterring and containing the multifaceted Chinese threat to the region, that he will see the importance of our alliances, not only to defend against the North Korean threat, but against the China threat as well. So it's in our interest to have alliances. It's in our interest to have our forces overseas. And I'm hoping his advisors will make clear to him that we shouldn't reduce our forces overseas, that we should have very strong relations. But the question there will be how strongly to push our allies and partners in the region to take stronger action against China throughout the region.
Right, so we'll really have to see until his inauguration date, which is soon. Now, let's move to Professor Che. So at the end of last year, the leaders of South Korea, the U.S. and Japan agreed to institutionalize trilateral cooperation by establishing a trilateral cooperation secretariat. And this is seen as a safety mechanism to prepare for the Trump 2.0 era. What outcomes and challenges are we expecting?
Yes, this trilateral cooperation secretariat, as you mentioned, it was established by South Korea, Japan, the United States to strengthen their partnership and work together on common challenges like North Korean nuclear threat and also China's growing influence in the region. But unfortunately, I think its future is now very uncertain due to some changes in the leadership, also domestic political situation. The one key issue is that the leaders who agreed to create the secretariat, they are no longer in active power now, or also the President Yoon Suk-yeol is now facing domestic difficulties. So, he is now dealing with the political instability and also even the possibility of impeachment. And this has created uncertainty about the country's foreign policy direction. So, as Bruce mentioned, if South Korea's next president comes from a more progressive party, the cooperation between South Korea and other countries could face some challenges because the past history shows that the progressive governments in South Korea often take a softer approach toward North Korea, and also it is less aligned with Japan. So these two characteristics could weaken the trilateral partnership. Another problem is the ongoing historical tension between South Korea and Japan, and also differences in how they approach China. So if South Korea's domestic politics shift toward a more progressive direction, it could make it even harder for three countries to manage this issue and also maintain unity in their trilateral framework. So in short, this trilateral cooperation secretariat has the potential to manage regional stability and also address the important challenges. But its success really depends on how quickly South Korea can resolve domestic political uncertainty and also maintain trust with with Japan.
Right, so this is a very important trilateral cooperative thing. And with South Korea's current political turmoil and upcoming Trump administration, what could South Korea and Japan do to, further develop this trilateral cooperation?
Yes, I believe the two countries can take some regional some concrete steps to address regional and global challenges. First of all, South Korea and Japan should work together on key regional issues, of course, North Korean nuclear threat and also the rising Chinese power in East Asia. So I want to emphasize the importance of joint efforts, such as joint military training and intelligence sharing, and also coordinated economic policies. And these kind of efforts will show unity and also highlight the importance of their partnership with the United States. It is also important for South Korea and Japan to engage more actively with the Trump administration to understand its priorities and also expectation towards their alliance partner. And we know that the Trump administration, Donald Trump himself, prefers a more transactional approach. And this shows that presenting a unified plan and also emphasizing our contribution will help keep the United States fully committed to this trilateral partnership. And finally, also we need to get the consent of our citizens. So public support is important as well. So both countries, Korea and Japan, should explain the benefits of this trilateral cooperation to their citizens to reduce some public resistance due to historical concern and also ideological differences.
Right, public understanding is very important. Now, mentioning of China at this point, ahead of the second Trump term, China and Japan are speeding up efforts to improve their relationship, including reviving exchanges between the ruling parties for the first time in 6 years, and planning also to resume high-level communications. Mr. Klinger, what kind of diplomatic approach should South Korea now take regarding China-Japan relations?
Well, and any time one of the three countries, the U.S., South Korea, and Japan, engages not only with China, but also with North Korea, I think there's always a little bit of nervousness amongst the other two countries as to whether there's going to be a change in policy by the country engaging China or North Korea. So to allay those concerns, there has to be a lot of engagement and coordination amongst Washington, Seoul, and Tokyo as to, ensure that there isn't a major change in policy. So there's a balance right now of wanting to maintain good relations with China, but also not acquiesce to their demands on economic or security on diplomatic issues. So while we maintain the very strong coordination amongst the three countries that we've seen under the Yoon administration, the big question again is what would a DP government have? Because there is concern that the DP is much more conciliatory when it reaches to China and to North Korea. We've seen comments by party leader Lee Jae-myung that, especially when it comes to China, that there would be less pushing back on Beijing's intimidating and coercive tactics towards its neighbors. And that's going to cause a lot of concern in both Washington and Tokyo. So in the near term, under the current Korean government, we need to maintain coordination. And then even more importantly, during a DP government, if that occurs, there has to be, I think, very strong but private commentary by Washington and Seoul not to abandon the conditional approach that we've seen during the past couple of years towards both Beijing and Pyongyang.
Right. I'm afraid we'll have to leave our discussion right here. It was a discussion with a lot of ifs, but thank you so much for bringing us your insights, even though despite this uncertain situations at home and abroad. Professor Che, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And also, Mr. Klinger, we appreciate it.
Thank you.
And that'll be all from us on Within the Frame. Be sure to tune in next time as we continue to explore the stories that matter. Until then, stay informed and engaged.